The Beyond the Fame podcast is fed by Lido Pizza. Lido Pizza never cuts corners. For menu and locations, visit LidoPizza.com. This month's programming is sponsored by Signature Theater, presenting the DC premiere of the untitled, unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson musical. Follow the godfather of gonzo journalism as he barrels through American history in this critically acclaimed new rock musical now through July 13th. Buy tickets now at sigtheater.org. And of course, this podcast would not be possible without our longtime title sponsor, the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. Upcoming featured entertainment includes Kevin James adding a second show June 7th and Band of Horses June 14th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. James Blunt plays Wolf Trap in Vienna, Virginia on June 18th to mark the 20th anniversary of his breakthrough album, Back to Bedlam. He joined me to discuss his journey from serving in the British military to recording the global smash hit, You're Beautiful. Hey, James Blunt. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show today.
So nice to talk to you.
Where are you joining us from? We're here in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, but I always love to see where on the road you are.
I am at Heathrow Airport. I'm just about to catch a plane to Nice in France before I then connect on to Toronto in Canada to start my North American tour.
Wow. We're literally catching you right before you head over here on the
Yeah.
tour. This is great. Well, thanks for taking time for us in the freaking airport. That's dedication.
Otherwise I'm just hanging around, so it's a treat.
Well, I really sincerely appreciate it. And we should tell everyone that we were talking because you're coming to Wolf Trap, awesome venue in Vienna, Virginia on June 18th. Now, are we billing this as sort of like a 20th anniversary tour for your Back to Bedlam, which came out in, I thought it
Yeah.
was 2004, but I guess 2005-ish, somewhere around there, right?
In the States, it was 2005. And so, yeah, this is the 20th anniversary, 20 years. And so I thought to myself, I should milk this album for as much as it's worth, and get out on the road, and see what happens. And I've already toured around the UK and Europe on it. It's been a blast. And we're just very excited to come and see you guys, in Vienna.
Awesome. And does that mean that you're going to be playing that album, start to finish, or is it more, pluck a couple highlights off and then sprinkle in other hits from over the years kind of a vibe?
Well, I'm going to play the whole of the album from top to bottom in the order that the album was recorded and released.
Awesome.
There's a real danger of that, which is that my big hit, You're Beautiful, was the second song on the album. So, guys, you could turn up, listen to these two songs, and then leave if you want.
No, they're not gonna do that. Are you kidding me? You get Goodbye Lover by the fourth song. You'll end with No Bravery by the end. And oh, that's great. So it's a 10-song set, or then you add some other stuff as well.
No, then I've got some other songs, which I haven't hit so big in the States, but around the rest of the world, I've had some huge hits, like a song called Monsters, 1973, Bonfire Heart, and those are the ones that we'll talk and by the end, what, the first half is a beautiful walk down memory lane, and then there's a big old party for the second half of the concert.
I love it. See, folks, if that's not a teaser enough to come, then what are you even doing? This is like one of the live music shows that you're not gonna want to miss. I mean, you are one of the most talented voices of our time, so you got to get out to Wolf Trap, everybody.
Thank you so much. And we feel we've rehearsed. Also, it's important to say we've rehearsed on the Europeans, so by the time we get to you, we're in full flow.
So you're just you're testing stuff out over in Europe, and you're gonna save the best for us. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
I really, really appreciate that too. If there are any European listeners to this, worldwide podcast, he's joking. You're going to get a good show too. But Wolf Trap's going to get the best.
Don't be offended. Exactly. I mean, it meant just as much to me in Europe. But for me, genuinely, I'm genuinely excited to be coming back out to the States. It's been a while since I've been there. I've always had a blast, and so yeah, it's going to be a proper treat for me and my band.
We love it. We really appreciate you coming and for joining this show. So whenever I have someone on, I'd love to, I love to obviously tease the show at the top, like we just did, your upcoming concert. But I also love to paint sort of a journey of your, through music, because all your fans love to hear how you got into this record to begin with, and then some deep dives on some of the songs, that kind of thing. If you'll indulge me. So yeah, so I know
Of
you're
course.
born in Hampshire, England, in '74, right? So I want to what sort of music did you listen to growing up? What were like your touchstones?
Yeah, well, you kind of need to just to put in context. I was born in an army hospital in the English countryside, one which I found myself later going back to for my own army medical when I joined the army. And my parents traveled around a lot because my dad was a colonel in the army, an army helicopter pilot. And so on long, long journeys, we had the same three tapes day in, day out. It was the Beatles' greatest hits, the Beach Boys' greatest hits, and the Don McLean album of the time. And that's all we listened to on long journeys.
Hey,
Apart
that's
from they
not
had,
too bad.
yeah,
That's three of
it's
the
not too
greatest.
shabby. They had one tape that they never listened to, and it was at home in a drawer. And that's the one I fell in love with. And it was Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here.
Oh God, that's one right up there with
Yeah,
maybe one of my favorite
yeah.
songs ever. Don't you love how it kind of starts with that acoustic guitar and him like sniffing and almost like he's making coffee in the morning, and you know what I mean? It's like it feels like
Yeah.
we're there waking up with him.
And I guess that's kind of what, my father, kind of regimented human being, just didn't kind of get that kind of thing. But for me, that was proper a beautiful expression.
Just two lost souls swimming in a fish bowl year after year, right?
Yeah.
Man, that is great. Well, thanks for and I did want to say you sort of follow in the footsteps of both of your parents, right? Because not only did you enter the military like your father, your mom was like an avid skier, right? Ski resorts, and you became a Royal Armored Corps giant slalom champion in 2000. So you made both
Yeah.
parents proud, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very lucky. I was a reconnaissance officer in the army, and so sent away on operations in different places, dangerous places like Canada, and some other pretty torrid places like Kosovo during the war there.
Mhm.
And then my final job was the Queen's ceremonial bodyguard, on a horse in London. So you see tourists come and take photographs of us. But one of the gigs they'd give me as well is to go over to Switzerland in the mountains every year, and ski and race. And that was just an incredible opportunity. People say, how can you justify that? And I always say, well, well, no one invaded Switzerland while I was there. But we had a pretty amazing time.
That is impressive stuff. You served in the British Army from, I guess, '96 to 2002, rose to the rank of captain. Impressive. And like you said, you served in various areas, including the Kosovo War, I guess sent in by NATO. So speak to the importance of NATO. It's kind of under, threat these days, Russia, Ukraine, etc. But go
Yeah,
into
I
this
do
better.
feel very strongly that, you in this life, friends are important. And that's what NATO is about, is having friends and allies, that care for each other and care for, each other's safety and security. And also to care for your neighbors, to care for their well-being, but your neighbors as an individual person, or your neighbor as your country, the next door country. To care for those people is hugely important. So that so that you don't have disparity and fights and arguments along the way. So that instead you see them as friends that can get on with each other throughout life.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. All right, and then how do you pivot sort of into music? I guess your first album comes out right after you leave, but you were writing songs like No Bravery while you were in the service, right? Like, so are you just in between tours of duty and you're just jotting down lyrics?
Yeah, I would take a guitar on operations in war. Someone took a pack of cards, someone took a football, and I strapped a guitar to the outside of my tank. I wanted to put it on the inside of the tank, but there's not enough room in the tank. I would have had to strap a soldier to the outside of the tank, and I was told I wasn't allowed to do that. So I put that guitar on the outside, and I would write songs. And the songs I wrote were very, very raw as a result. Kosovo is a place where exactly what I was talking about is going on. Neighbors were turning on neighbors for silly reasons that politicians were pushing them towards. Saying, "Hey, look, we're a different race or a different religion from each other," and people were then, killing each other en masse. As society broke down in that way, and it was an absolutely terrible and awful thing. And so the songs I wrote, I didn't need to use imagination. I just wrote what I saw.
Absolutely. And thanks for reminding us sort of, it's sad how quickly people forget the history of some of these wars. But yeah, thanks to NATO intervening with your airstrikes. What was it in spring of '99? The Yugoslavian forces withdrew from Kosovo. So,
Yeah,
and I'm hoping Russia will withdraw from Ukraine as well. Personally, so.
yeah, absolutely, exactly. Because these things, what you see is just incredible violence, and civilians who are the ones who suffer at the fate of politicians' whims. And so it was, it was an amazing education. I'm glad to have seen it, but it was very sad at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that was on a serious note, but yes, but let's pivot into the positive stuff, which is like you're saying, you had a guitar and you're still always pursuing that love of music throughout your service. So when you finally leave the service in what in 2002, how do you get that first record deal for Back to Bedlam? That's the album we're talking about for this tour. So yeah, how do you actually land the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I played in a ton of different little bars and clubs in London, trying to get a record deal, sometimes getting close, but never quite nailing it. And then eventually I found myself at the South by Southwest Music Festival in Austin, Texas.
My wife and I got engaged in Austin. I had no
No
idea that's
way.
where
Well,
you got.
it's a cool city, and I wasn't even in the main part of the festival. Found myself on the fringes, in the sort of 20th floor of a Ramada hotel, playing to only 20 people. But after the concert, a woman called Linda Perry walked up to me, and she was full of confidence. And she said, "Listen, I'm starting a new record label called Custard Records, and I want you to be on it. And if you sign with me today, I will send you the check to make the album of your dreams tomorrow. Let's do this." And I said, "Hell yes, come on."
And the rest of us said hell yes shortly after because that album was one of the biggest ones we've even seen in the 21st century. It's one of the biggest. Of course, your smash single, You're Beautiful, is number one song
And yeah,
all
I
over.
know the one. I know the one. I know the one. And thank God for me that I should be lucky enough to have that on that first album.
Absolutely. It's bizarre to think that there's a time when that song didn't exist because it's just so ubiquitous to all of us listeners. We
Absolutely.
hear it everywhere we go. But if we can, folks, try to close your eyes and we're going to transport back to a time when that song did not exist. When does it actually drop out of the cosmos into your ear or your pen? I guess you write it with a couple co-writers as well. But yeah, do you remember the moment that it comes to you?
Yeah, and what I did is, I was going through London. This was 2002. I walked through one of our metro, what do you subway rather you call it? We call it the Underground in London, but I was walking through the subway. I saw my ex-girlfriend. She was with a new boyfriend. I didn't know he existed. I went back home and I wrote the lyrics to this song in about a minute and a half in its completion. And then I flew out to Los Angeles to work with a guy called Sasha, and I said, "Hey, look, I've got this, this idea." And I had the chorus too, actually. I've been sitting there singing, God, what would I sing to her? What would I sing to her? And, I would just say, "You're beautiful," in the way that I sang it. And anyway, he picked me up from the airport. He stopped for a coffee. And then actually Ryan Adams's song, called La Cienega, Just Smiled, played. And I heard the chords to this. And as my friend Sasha got back in the car, I said, "Take me home, because I have a complete song for you now with the chorus with these lyrics, and I can put it to these chords because I could just sing it over the top of the Ryan Adams song." And we got back in there, we tied up the loose ends, and he just said, "Well, that's come easy, hasn't it?" And it's yeah, and I recorded that with Tom Rothrock in Los Angeles, who was my producer of the whole album. We kind of knew that we had something pretty special with it.
To say the least. It's such a special song, and I personally never get tired of hearing it, even though I'm sure you get tired of sharing the story that you just shared. I'm sure you've been asked it a million times. So I
Well,
appreciate
I really
you.
don't mind. I don't mind. And actually, the funny thing about it is, lots of people see it as this kind of, beautiful romantic song. And I do always joke, that when people play it at their weddings, well, if you listen to it really hard, it is about a guy, me, high as a kite on drugs, stalking someone else's girlfriend, in a public place. And but
Yeah.
if people relate to that and find that romantic, then everyone's just as weird as me. And thank God for that.
Yeah, yeah. In hindsight, maybe not the best wedding song, but hey, whatever worked for them, right?
But whatever works.
Amazing song. But I want to tell folks how big this was. I mean, we said it went to number one, but you were the first artist since I guess the previous British artist to go number one here in the States was Elton John in '97, and that was for the Princess Diana, the Candle in the Wind, the
Yeah,
remake.
yeah.
I guess originally Marilyn Monroe, but rewrote it for the funeral. And so I mean, and so that was massive. That's a pop culture moment, and it hadn't happened until you again. Had you ever talked to Elton about that?
Well, amusingly, the my manager, who I'd found in London when I was doing these small concerts, was actually Elton John's junior day-to-day manager. He had a senior manager and a junior manager, and that manager was my manager. So Elton effectively, he had set up this company of managers to look after younger artists. So in a way, Elton was kind of my oversight manager. So we absolutely spoke about that. He took me out on tour around the UK, around South America, and was a proper guide at the start of my career. So that was very funny when You're Beautiful hit number one.
That is such a cool connection. I always love tying in the historical connections. All right, one more on that song, and then we'll move on. But what did you make of the Weird Al Yankovic parody? You're pitiful. If he spoofs you, you've made it.
Exactly. I mean, I was hugely flattered. I was hugely flattered. Exactly. When Weird Al's done that as a cover, then you know you've made it.
Absolutely. It means your song is too big to ever be ignored. I get it. Uh, all right, one more off that album because that same album had "Goodbye My Lover," which you'll be hearing at Wolf Trap, folks, because he's playing it all the tracks all in order. At
Yeah.
the
Tell you what, I recorded the song in Carrie Fisher's bathroom. I was living there when I was recording the album. Just bizarrely managed to find myself living with Carrie Fisher.
Do I need to ask? How do you end up living in her house?
I met her in a restaurant in London. We sat down. She said, "What do you do?" I said, "I've just left the army. I've got a record deal. I'm heading to the States." She said, great. Where are you going to live?" I said, "I haven't sorted out a place yet." And she said, "Well, you're going to live with me." And for the first month, I didn't really speak to her. She lived in the house, and I was in a kind of cabin just outside. And then she actually had a kind of breakdown. She's a manic depressive, and she had a moment, an episode where her gardener and housekeeper were talking about her while she was in the room and saying she's mad. And I didn't see a mad person. I saw someone who's just actually her brain was moving too fast for others to follow, really. And I went and sat in her bedroom till 5 in the morning, just talking and talking, and the next day, I did exactly the same, and we became very, very dear friends. And yeah, she's godmother to my eldest child, and I will miss her a lot. But the story of recording, as I say, was I didn't have a piano in the studio I was in, and
Yeah.
she had one in the bathroom. So we just set up the microphones. She gave us soup, and what you hear on tape is a first take of a vocal in a bathroom. And it was a magical recording.
Oh yeah, because I mean, all your fans remember the song, but the backstory, that's so good. And thanks for sharing that. And I agree, people's brains move too fast sometimes. The real geniuses. Thank you for painting that in a
Yeah.
human light. But I do have to ask, there's a piano in the bathroom. That's good acoustics with the tile, I guess.
Yes, I think they all do that in Hollywood. That's it's that kind of a place.
I guess when the inspiration strikes, you got to be ready, even if you're nature's
Exactly.
calling. There you go. Um, All right. Well, of course, not only is it popular, the album is acclaimed. You get like 5 Grammy nominations off that thing, I guess,
Yeah,
including
amazing.
Best New Artist. There's no winners and losers, but dang that Carrie Underwood. And then you get Record of the Year nominated, and dang those Dixie Chicks, they win for Not Ready to Make Nice. But a great comeback album for them because remember here in the States they got trashed with the Iraq War opposition, and they're looking pretty good now on that, right? So.
Yeah, well, I think they were trashed the year before, wasn't it? So when the album came out, obviously that those Grammys that it kind of needed a bit of love and redemption from a nation that had treated them too harshly. So it fully deserved to get that recognition.
Absolutely. I think it had been a couple years that they were sort of outcast here by country fans, but I'm so glad they came back with that. And by the way, my wife opened for the Dixie Chicks when she was a teenager, so we got all
No
kinds of
way!
cool
How
tie-ins here.
fantastic!
I love those.
Amazing.
But in addition to, I listed who you were competing against, but in terms of your experience going to those Grammys, was that a whirlwind? Were there any cool encounters with any heroes of yours that you bumped into? I want to know sort of your Grammy experience.
Well, I was performing as well,
Yeah.
and so that was a kind of a super exciting moment. But then I wasn't performing on the main stage. I was in the round, in the audience. And it was just me on a guitar and my keyboard player with me playing beautiful world. It's a keyboard. And as we started, because we were far away from the stage, all the radio mics and monitors, because of everyone's telephones and things, started breaking up. So we were there like, in the middle of thinking, here we are. We've flown in for the biggest event of our lives, and everything's breaking. So that's why I remember it more than anything.
That's hilarious. Thanks for that story. Great, great. All right. Well, I wanted to spend most of the time of this interview on that first album because, like you're saying, that's like the 20th anniversary one
Yeah,
we're doing here
exactly.
here at Wolf Trap. But some of your fans, if they tune in to listen to this, they're gonna be, disappointed if they don't hear some of your other songs. So I'll try to move a little quickly through some of your other albums real quick. But some people would probably think some pressure to do the next album, All the Lost Souls. But you stepped up to the plate and delivered. Let's go into 1973. I guess was the biggest hit off of that, right? What was the inspiration for that? Was it Ibiza Club?
You know what? I live in Ibiza, and its most famous nightclub is called Pasha, which opened in 1973. And as you walk in this incredible club with 10,000 people in it, it says the date that it opened. And I obviously spent far too much of my life in that club, and so for that second album, that was the inspiration of that song. Everyone always asked me, what, were you born in 73 or something? No, 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 it just rhymed with I Will Always Be. in the club with you in 1973, but I loved the club so much. And then it went full circle. A guy called Pete Tong, a very famous DJ, remixed it and would play that same song in the club that I'd written about, which was just a rather magical moment to be in there.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And by the way, as time goes by, referenced and Casablanca is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Uh, do you have a favorite scene in that? Because to me, it's when the Nazis are singing their German chant, and Victor Laszlo gets pissed off, the leader of
Yes.
the resistance, and he goes to strike up the band to play La Marseillaise in opposition, the dueling anthems. But the band leader looks to Bogart, and he just gives that little nod, and that's the moment where Bogey's character is finally he
Yeah.
decides he's going to get involved.
Wonderful.
It's so great. That symbolizes America's reluctance to enter World War II. We are that our country was Bogart, and finally we got it.
Finally dragged
Yep,
in.
yep, exactly. All right, skipping ahead to Some Kind of Trouble's the third album. Stay the Night, similar to how you've done for these other songs. Any cool backstories on how that came to you?
Yeah, I wrote that with a songwriting friend of mine called Ryan Tedder, who is in the band One Republic,
Of course.
and I became a kind of like a groupie to the band One Republic at different stages because they'd come and tour around Europe on their tour bus, and as a friend of his, I would just jump on their tour bus, and write songs with him as he came off stage. I would have been in the audience and say, look, here's an idea, and here we go. So those were my groupie years.
I love it. All right, maybe time for one more deep dive on a song, but let's do Bonfire Heart. That was probably one of your bigger ones as well off the following album, Moon Landing.
Yeah,
Was
it's
that
exactly the
also with
same.
Ryan Tedder?
That's also with
Yeah.
Ryan, and that was just an amazing moment. I was in a venue in Amsterdam, about I suppose 7,000 capacity, looking at a band on stage that I was, touring with. But I played in that same venue. But there I am in the audience, and listening to him talk and listening to about the experience of being a singer, and and as he said, he walked off stage. Went in the bus and I said, "Look, here. I go for a lyric. Your mouth is a revolver, firing bullets into the sky." And we just rattled that song off in just a flash. It was a very exciting time to be on tour.
It's so cool. Two huge artists working together that we know your stuff individually and how talented you are, but when you combine, it's magic. Awesome. Well, thank you for those deep dives again. But folks, that only took us chronologically up to like 2013. There's been three more albums since, so maybe I'll try to combine them.
Yeah,
So the After Love is 2017. I'll just list them. Once Upon a Mind in 2019, and then Who We Used to Be 2023, the first post-pandemic album.
yeah,
Of those three, which are you most proud of?
yeah. I think Once Upon a Mind is a very special album to me, and the song that means a lot, which has been heard a lot in the States, is a song called Monsters.
Yeah.
It was sung by this very sweet guy on American Idol. His father had sadly died the month before, and as he sang my song, which is about my own father, my father had been very unwell, and needed a kidney, so I wrote this song for him. And as I say, this young kid came and sang it on American Idol, and the judges and everyone was so moved by it. And it was weird. It was my birthday back in the UK. I was there with my wife having a party for two, and my phone just started going off the hook saying, your song, and Monsters is number one in the iTunes charts in America, and that is a sweet birthday present. I couldn't understand why until I looked online and saw what this guy had sung and how he'd sung it. And me and my wife said, God, wouldn't it be amazing if he got to the finals and invited me to sing with him? And sure enough, a couple of months later, he did. And I flew to the States, sang beside him, and it was just a deeply moving moment to sing beside a guy whose father had been taken from him just the month
That's
before,
so
live in front of millions of people, and to put my arm on his own arm as he broke down in tears during the performance was deeply moving.
Yeah, Iam Tangi was his name.
Ian Tongi is his name,
He's from
exactly.
Hawaii, and he auditioned
Exactly.
with your song. So then to come full circle and win the whole thing with you there too, that's a cool full circle moment in the history of Idol there.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
See, you got your payback on Carrie Underwood by going on Idol. That's great.
Uh,
All right. Well, you've been more than generous with your time, going through all your different music and your backstory and everything. I guess we should say, to bring it full circle to the Wolf Trap Show, folks, in between the songs, you're underrated comedian. As seen in your book, How to Be a Complete and Utter Blunt Diary of a Reluctant Social Media Sensation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if when my music career completely dries up, not just from the States, but the rest of the world, then absolutely, then stand up is going to obviously have to be my next gig. But I suppose the kind of the concert is this kind of emotional roller coaster because I have these some very emotional, heavy songs Then I have my band, who are the rock stars I always wanted to be, who make a rock concert, and then I tell some silly stories from a one-hit wonder on the road for the last 20 years, in between, and it makes for hopefully a wonderful emotional experience.
Oh, listen to that self-deprecating humor, folks. You are far more than just a one-hit wonder. Come on.
Thank you. Okay, one and a half.
Well, Fellini did 8.5, so you're a funny dude, to put it bluntly. Well, folks, if you enjoyed this conversation, you'll enjoy the convo in between the songs, and of course, all of the great songs from the Back to Bedlam 20th anniversary tour at Wolf Trap in Virginia on June 18th. Get your tickets now.
And I'm jumping on a plane and heading your way now.
All right. Well, yeah, they're probably calling your flight number now, so we gotta let you bounce. But thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, it is so good to talk to you. I hope you'll come backstage at Wolf Trap, because it'd be great to see you there.
All right, safe flight. Seriously, safe travels.
Thank you so much. You take care.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.